Good morning, everybody. Just start with an apology, really, that I couldn't be with you yesterday. So if I mention something that was already discussed yesterday, apologies for that, but hopefully it would add to it rather than detract. And also I've woken up with a bit of a cold, so hopefully you'll still be able to understand me.
Just that you know, for the record, this is because he had a date with Dalai Lama over the weekend in Glastonbury. So,
thanks for that, Matty. So we've heard a lot, I would imagine, about some reflections on the authorisation process yesterday and also this morning. So this last presentation is a short presentation on how ECHA and others have reflected on the experiences to date and how they are making improvements and other initiatives to improve the authorisation process for all involved. So, and I'll also talk about the expected workload in terms of applications for authorisation that we're expecting over the next year or so, and how we're organising ourselves in order to be able to deal with this number of applications. So what I'll talk about is what ECHA sees really as the objectives for the AFA process within ECHA, what is ahead of us in terms of the applications, but also in terms of how we're adapting to them and how we're improving and changing our processes to meet this demand, how we're improving our capacity to deal with these applications. I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've been doing over the last 12 months, some of which you've probably already talked about and which we've decided that we'll continue because they're considered to be useful. I'm going to talk about how we're improving our efficiency and also the initiatives like the low volume special cases and the special cases for things like the legacy spare part uses that have been under development for the last 12 months or so, but also introduce some of the further ideas for efficiency that are being discussed within this thing called the AFA task force, which builds on what Matty just discussed about this consultation on the special cases. I'll talk about some new services that we've introduced over the last few months, because we do want to try and continue to be innovative in the sort of support that we offer you as applicants. And then I'll just finish up with some conclusions. So just to give you, to reiterate really a little bit about what we see ECHA's role within the application for authorisation process is really to provide an efficient but business-orientated application process. And there's three elements really to this that we see. We do believe that substitution should take place when it's possible, and that applications should be fit for purpose. And they should also have preparation costs that are as low as possible. We think that applications should have appropriate scrutiny, and in order to do that, we believe that there should be a high level of competence both within the ECHA Secretariat and also within its committees in the way that it can review these applications. We want the committees to be able to produce clear and well-justified opinions that the Commission can then use without delay in the decision-making process. And overriding all of this, we want to make sure that the process has a high level of trust and transparency and allows an overall level of scrutiny by the stakeholder observers to the committees. This is the estimated number of applications that we believe that we'll be dealing with over the next year or so. And this was estimated last week, so it may have changed a little bit. This is quite a dynamic estimate. On the left-hand side, you can see this is the actual number of applications that we received during the May submission windows, this figure of 4. We were expecting a slightly larger number within August, but maybe not surprisingly, we're seeing that applicants are delaying when they're actually making their applications, and this particularly relates to the chromates, and they're going to now use a later submission window, which is why we see sort of a very large number of applications coming in the November submission window. and then tailing off within February, which is the last submission window for the chromates, and then we have an estimate of 1 in May. So we have about 72 in total, which is the number we forecast for at least the last 18 to 24 months for this particular period, but we're seeing a sort of a peak within the November submission window. We've been planning for a while about how we were going to deal with this number of applications, and we've been developing what we call the second line of defence. This is a team of ECHA Secretariat staff that will complement the existing staff within the Risk Management Implementation Unit that will deal with the applications for authorisation. So some of the ECHA staff that you see here today and yesterday are part of this second line of defence, and if you can't see them here, that's probably because they're following on WebEx. They've also been involved shadowing trialogue meetings that have happened over the last 6 months or so, and also coming to committee meetings and things. So we do have enough staff to deal with this number of applications. We've also been developing the competence within RAC and SAEC on some specific issues, and we've been training our internal staff on things like project management, how to work better in teams, and on a specific sort of technical issue on the socioeconomic analysis aspects of applications for authorisation. Something that we found to be particularly important, and you can see with the figure that I just presented, is that we do recommend that potential applicants do let us know what their plans are in terms of when they're planning to submit. We consider that that is in the interest of both the applicants and ECHA, really. There's 2 ways of doing that. You can notify an intention to submit an application for authorisation via the website, and there's also the request for this pre-submission information session that also gives us another indication about when an application is due to arrive. I mentioned about the things that we considered that we would keep doing because they were considered based on the feedback that we'd had to be mutually beneficial really for applicants and ourselves. We've already talked a little bit this morning about the level of confidential information within applications. We're really keen that the level of confidential information is kept to a minimum, really, because it helps promote transparency, and it also makes the public consultation on alternatives a lot more meaningful. So we want to continue to promote that. We want to strive for an efficient, well-functioning process that offers opportunities for all the actors that are involved in the authorisation process, opportunities to effectively participate and contribute. So the things like the pre-submission information sessions, we're dealing with lots of these at the moment in terms of the chromates. It's quite resource intensive from our perspective, but we consider that they add a lot of value to the applicants. So we'll, at least for the short term, consider that we'll keep doing these. The trialogue meeting, again, in certain circumstances, will be very useful to have. We have plans to review sort of potentially the format for the trialogue meeting, because we do know that applicants really value the opportunity to discuss their applications with the rapporteurs once they've been submitted, although sometimes they feel that they don't necessarily need to organise a trialogue. They will be most important when it comes to discussing potential alternatives or any information that's submitted via the public consultation. Alina mentioned that this morning. You're at a seminar now. We want to continue to do those. We hope they're of value to you. We also run workshops on specific issues, and we also run this thing called the Partner Service that I don't know whether or not was mentioned yesterday, but it's an opportunity to try and allow potential downstream users or companies that are interested in applications to meet other companies that are also considering putting in applications for authorisation. It's been live on our website for about a year. It certainly has quite a bit of interest on it, and we'll continue to run it as long as it's considered to be useful. Hopefully you all know that we publish Q&As on our website in terms of specific issues for the applications for authorisation. I should stress that these are really, really useful. So if you're not aware of them, please have a look at them. They deal with specific issues that either arise on a substance-specific basis or because of experience that we've had in maybe a previous application for authorisation that means that we want to supplement the existing guidance with a small snippet that can really help you on a specific issue. We add to those quite regularly. They're relatively easy to find on the website, so I'd stress that you have a look at those if you can. RAC will continue to develop these reference dose-response relationships and DNL values. Overwhelmingly positive feedback from applicants on these, and we will also strive to share these as early as possible after a substance has been listed on Annex 14, really to allow people to prepare as early as possible. This last bullet point isn't actually something that we've done already, but it's work that's been ongoing for a while, but it's just being published now. This is work on estimates of reference values for health outcomes that can be considered to be useful for the socio-economic aspects of an application. These are things like willingness to pay values for avoiding certain health outcomes, and also things called QALYs and DALYs, which are quality adjusted life year values or disability adjusted life year values, that people will be able to use to essentially develop the quantitative aspects of their socioeconomic analysis. They go hand in hand really to the reference dose response relationships. Matti, did we talk about those yesterday?
Not that much on this particular point, no. But I can complement if needed. So,
yeah, okay. But the plans are that that will be published soon?
Yes. The studies actually on the willingness to pay are on our website. Yeah, okay. So the raw data are there. What is not there is still a summary of that, which we are working on right now. Okay. And that will be hopefully ready in July. But okay. That depends a bit on when the consultant writes the final report, which is not ready
okay. yet. So keep a watching eye out for that. I think we acknowledge that there's aspects of the application full test process that we can do better, and we strive to do that. So within ECHA, at least for the last year or so, we've had our own internal efficiency and improvement project, and that will continue over the next 12 to 18 months. We've identified numerous actions as part of this programme. The bullet points here that are in normal font are ones that we've already implemented, and you will have heard about them already. I'm sure some of them at least over the last few days. So these are things like the combined AOA and SAA format that's now available. We now disseminate applications to the RAC and SAEC rapporteurs a lot more earlier after they're submitted to us. That gives the rapporteurs longer to develop their opinions. We call it front-loading the process. We now use something called key issues procedures in RAC and SAEC to allow rapporteurs to highlight the potentially most significant aspects of an application to the rest of the committees very early on in the process, to allow other members of the committee to engage with the rapporteurs if they have specific expertise on an area. We've developed standard presentation formats and guidance for rapporteurs in RAC and SAEC to make the whole committee process in terms of the discussions about opinions more easy. We've improved the way that we plan the committee meetings and how we discuss or stage applications through the 10-month period that we have to develop the draft opinions. And we're developing an expanded, what we call information pack that's presented to the applicants after they submit, which outline the overall process and what they can expect in terms of their requirements for engagement over the 10-month period. We're revising what we call overview guidance on the AFA process on the web. I actually think this went live last week now, so that's done. And then we're also developing what is called here standard text for RAC and SAEC opinions, a catalogue. Basically, the idea is that we can learn from the opinions that have been developed in the past, so that when rapporteurs are developing opinions on new applications, this catalogue will will help them refer back to what was done previously in similar situations to help improve consistency and speed up the whole opinion development process within the committees. That's still under development. We hope to have a draft of that, at least for discussion within the committees over the next 3 to 4 months. And we're also improving our own IT systems for managing and disseminating the information between the ECHA Secretariat and the Commission and the committee staff. Another element where the improvements are happening is external to ECHA within this group called the AFA Task Force, and this is comprised of ECHA, also members of the RAC and SEC committees, members of the Commission and also Member State competent authorities. The aim of the AFA Task Force is to improve the workability of the AFA process. It's had two elements really. Over the last 12 months or so, the focus has been on what's called these special cases. These are scenarios where it's considered that maybe a full or a standard application for authorisation is disproportionate to the actual risk or the particular scenario at case. And the ones that have been developed so far, or at least developed to the greatest extent, are special cases for low volumes. And as Matty said, this is about 100 to 1,000 kilograms per year potentially. And then for this...
Let me explain. 100. Commission said 100. The only question is whether it's possible to have also applications which are, say, for instance, for formulators. And there the question is whether it would be possible to deviate from that. But the basic number is 100.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And then this scenario for legacy spare part uses, which are essentially parts for articles that were placed on the market or the manufacture of these articles ceased prior to the sunset date, where it's considered that the socio-economic arguments for maintaining these articles are overwhelming. So that was the focus over the last 12 months or so. We're waiting for the Commission to implement these special cases within an implementing regulation that we understand they're working on at the moment, and based on the outcome of the public consultation that Matty just mentioned. The other element is something called general simplification. I think that will be more of the focus of the task force over the next 12 months or so. And it's developing, or at least considering things like the whole concept of a fit-for-purpose application, about what is the level of detail that is required to justify these cases. Owen mentioned this morning this concept of common elements of maybe downstream user applications where it's possible that they could be developed for a sector, for example, and that would certainly reduce overall effort. This is something that we're quite keen to explore, potentially with a specific focus for the pharmaceuticals industry. And I think at the AFA Task Force meeting that took place last week, a date has been settled, I believe, on the 23rd of September for when we'll hold a workshop on this whole concept of... Yeah, that's right. So it'll be organised by CEFIC and we'll collaborate with them. We're also quite keen to develop a system where we can give some feedback on the AFA documentation that's been submitted in the past in terms of best practice. This will, we hope, allow applicants to look at what was done previously and being able to say, well, okay, this was received well by the committees, this necessarily wasn't, and be able to learn from the experience in terms of how they develop their own approach going forwards. And then one of the biggest challenge, I think, and I understand that this was discussed already yesterday, is that the specific challenges of preparing and assessing these, what we consider to be sort of upstream or manufacturer type applications for authorisation. And there'll be a workshop on this element that will be on in November 2015. 17th? 17th of November. Okay. A conference, not a workshop. Okay. So I mentioned at the start that we try and be innovative in the type of support that we give applicants. An example of this was what we called the SME Day that we ran about 3 months ago. We were aware that there maybe wasn't necessarily the level of understanding of the application for authorisation process within SMEs that we would have liked or hoped for. And we felt that one way that we could have engaged with SMEs was by speaking to them in their native languages. So we settled on this concept of a day, and SMEs were invited to submit questions to us on any aspect of the application for authorisation process in their own native languages. And then we then arranged a convenient time for us to contact them and discuss their specific questions again in their native language. I think we considered that that was a success when we ran it, and I think there'll be plans to do a similar sort of day again in the future. Again, and then secondly here, it's not necessarily a new service, but this is an aspect of the REACH regulation that is only just being implemented now, and these are the downstream user notifications. That if a downstream user uses a substance on Annex 14 and it benefits from an application for authorisation that was submitted by a manufacturer or someone upstream, they are obligated to notify us that they're using that application for authorisation. So the web form for us to be able to collect that information is being developed now and will be live soon. We hope that actually it will become very useful for the upstream applicants, as we hope to be able to share some of the information that we receive from the downstream users back to the original applicants to help them when it comes to submitting review reports, for example. So just a final slide here, just in conclusion. I think, well, we hope that based on all of the work that we try and do in terms of outreach and guidance, that it's keen that ECHA, we care about the process, and we care that applicants can actively participate and engage with the process in a constructive way. We want the authorisation process to substitute the uses of substances of very high concern when it's appropriate. We want that approach to be as business orientated as possible, and we want the application for authorisation process to focus on the key issues at hand, which will be the remaining risks and the benefits of use to society. We've already evaluated about 50 uses now, so we're gaining experience all the time, and we think we've got a well-functioning process, and we're prepared for the level of applications that we'll get over the next year or so. But we always want to improve the process further, and we find that the best way to do that is when we receive feedback from potential applicants. And there should be many opportunities for you to provide that feedback to us during the process. So if you ever want to suggest anything to us, then please do. And one aspect of this improvement are the streamlined or the fit-for-purpose applications and opinion making that we hope we'll be able to roll out as soon as possible. Okay, thanks very much.